All right. We've been working on learning our Ioway language as best we can, and I just wanted to put down a few thoughts, um, kind of where I'm at, observations I've had on trying to learn a language that we've heard very little. Most of us, maybe sometimes not at all, except for recordings. Um, I heard it very little when I was younger. My grandmother had a few words here and there, and I heard the tapes that were made by Jim Goodtracks and others, Lila Whiston Robinson. And I was lucky enough when I was in my, God, it was in my 30s, I think it was, anyway, that I heard some of the elders in Oklahoma talking, and talked to like Art Lightfoot and some of the others there, Esther Fields, Bob Fields' mother, and some other folks, and making sure I was pronouncing things right and learning a few sentences, mainly kind of listening to the rhythm. That's the part you can't get from pages either, is the rhythm, the tone, the mannerisms. Um, I hope you guys know that there are some digital files are up. The Iowas of Oklahoma on their website, on the library page at the bottom, there's a couple of language classes that were recorded and uploaded digitally, um, that Franklin Murray in his 80s, in the 1970s, 77 or so, he was in his upper 80s already. Uh, he was one of the major resources for GEM, and so a few observations. Now, I've been looking at some of the other videos for other learning other languages. We can't take advantage of a lot of those. Not like if you're learning Spanish or Chinese even. Um, there aren't any native speakers left. The people that are left, um, they had the experience of being able to listen to their elders, their grandparents and parents and stuff, speaking it, especially in Oklahoma. Being here on the reservation for some time now, I've been here a little bit over a year now, talking to people, and although there are a few phrases here and there that people remember, um, our people, the Northern Iowas, pretty much stopped speaking the language um, as a fan for the most part. I don't know. I'm guessing by the 40s and 50s, there were very few that spoke it as a conversational thing. I mean, there were words and phrases, but as a conversation between people. That was done in the 1940s and 1950s, and that's over 60 years ago. So we can't feel too bad that we're starting where we are. Don't get down on yourself. None of us should, and we do the best we can. My grandma, I remember, she told me that in her estimation, the ladies that spoke the language the best that she had met was um, Sarah Rubidoux and Mamie Campbell. She said those ladies talked Indian really good. My her mother, my great grandmother Nora Berida, she spoke some of it, um, but my great grandfather didn't like that. Back in those days, it was not good to be Indian, and people were discouraged from speaking Indian, not only from the boarding schools, but even worse, sometimes from their own families. Um, they were they didn't talk it to the younger people. They didn't think it would be useful. In fact, it probably would be harmful to them. So that's what we're working with. We're starting someplace almost like learning a dead language, really. Almost like we're learning Babylonian or Sumerian or something. So not quite as long as that. And there are some tapes, at least, we can listen to improve our pronunciation. Another thing people sometimes get stuck on, and we get stuck on sometimes, is spelling. There are so many different variant ways of spelling the Iowa language. The missionaries had maybe two or three different ways of spelling the same words. Then Dorsey in the 90s had his own way of spelling. Then Gordon Marsh in the 1930s and William Whitman, who used his material, had their own versions of spelling. 1970s, he started working with by Wilson Robinson and Jim Goodtrack's helping her. Um, they came up with a couple different versions of spelling from the L and the R and the X and the KH. And of course, in 1977, the Southern Iowans had their language class through Franklin Murray's family, and that's where you see the words like Ba Koje with a KH and dashes in between to help people pronounce things. I just don't want people to get stuck on the whole spelling thing. Some people it's hard to get past that, and it would be better if we had a common way of spelling. But we're just not there yet. People aren't. I mean, even let alone individuals. The northern Iowas tend to go with one of the variants of Jim's versions, and the southern Iowas tend to still go with the dashed variants of ones taught by Franklin Murray and those guys. So let's just not get too into that. Let's not worry too much about the spelling. Let's just talk to each other, because the language being spoken is where we're at. All the writing, that was all white man stuff anyway, trying to help those of us who weren't raised with the language, trying to come up with an approximate way of saying things. We're not as in the position of, say, the Dakota or any of the Algonquian speakers like Anishinaabe or those guys. We have a very small language. Not a lot of people speak it. The Otos are similar, but some people still can't get over the differences between Iowa and Oto. So that's a sticking point. Realize that part of our problem has been sticking points, whether it's spelling or who taught it or those guys don't talk it right or whatever. That's what killed our language. That's what put the coup de grace. I mean, maybe the boarding schools and the white man thing started killing our language, but in a way we kind of finished it ourselves by getting too wrapped up on doing it the right way according to what we think. The main thing we got to do is talk to each other, each other, And if you can't, I'm having trouble. I mean, I'm going to tell you for a minute about my problems. I have a lot of problems with the sentence structure, not sentence, but verb complex. I can do basic things like garçon, wanye, manike, soon the man will be walking, already the man will be walking. Stuff like that, or Thimitawe, my foot is yellow, that kind of thing. I can do that. But the ones that have these 8 parts of infixes and suffixes and the verb complex, I'm struggling with that. And a lot of them, we don't have models for a lot of the verbs, or how you're supposed to do it. So that's going to be something I'm tackling new. I've got a pretty good basic vocabulary. I can do basic sentence structure. That my pronunciation is okay as far as what we have anymore. I know that because the elders in Oklahoma, I think it was there was an Ioway funeral, but then there was, I'm sorry, I can't remember the person's name I went to because I don't really know anybody yet, but I went to Esther Murray's funeral and Esther Fields, and I talked to the elders there and talked to some of the Kents and stuff, and said, my pronunciation is good. It's okay for new people. I mean, I'm not a native speaker, and I will be, but it's sufficient, So I'm okay with that. But my difficulty, my new direction I'm trying to work in is the verb complex, because that's where it's going to be really hard. Our verb complexes are really complex. If you get a chance, go to Jim has on his site about language, materials for language study, and I think it was Joel Greer, who wrote a little bit about grammar. And William Whitman in his 1947 work talked about the grammar of the verb complex. And it's just not at all like English. It's not at all like, here's a word, what's the translation, now let's make it isn't at all like that. And that's going to be tough. For people who find it hard time saying bakoje, or people who find it hard saying, going udwaye manike, the cat is walking, have a hard time with that. Oh man, the verb complex is a tough one. And most people, what they end up doing is just kind of memorizing, particularly how to say something. But I think that will only take us so far. we don't have any experts. I can't go to somebody in Ireland to learn Irish. I can't go to somebody in Russia to learn Russian. There's nobody that knows this stuff 100% anymore. Nobody. So do what you can, get started. And these are just some thoughts. I may have some more thoughts later on. I may repeat these thoughts, but I think having this talk, I just want to encourage you that you can learn the pronunciation. Get past the spelling stuff that so many people are stuck on. Maybe we'll just do some talking back and forth. One of the surprises we're kind of working on is some of the folks from Oklahoma. If we can get our internet working at the museum, we're going to probably have once a week kind of an event where we kind of stream back and forth, maybe through Skype or something. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, thank you, Warirohi, for listening to me rant a little bit, and maybe you want to post something about your experiences or something about how you are going to try to learn a language or the problems you're having getting motivated or staying with it. Anyway, I guess that's it. Torigun, to the future.